Everyone, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. If you notice, I got my music going. It's because I got my music machine here right next to me now, and we have something special coming up for you. Little lanyap, little something extra. Extra for the low ones. Oh my goodness. The internet cut out. But you know, this is the thing about the internet cutting out. The digital divide is real. And this goes to show you that it is in fact real. Anyway, I think we're on. I think we're on. If you notice, I'm in my gong closet. I got my music, my meditative music. Because these are news meditations. And I have this copyright, the copyright free music going, so I don't have to pay anybody. But if I had my druthers, I'd have Kulintang music. Kulintang, the Filipino stuff. And that's the thing that we're doing special today. We're going to talk about a special double album that was released by the Smithsonian Folkways. Kulintang Kultura. We're going to talk to one of the co-producers, co-produced by Theo Gonzalez, and one of my guests coming up today, Ty Buckle is the Kulintang Guru S. She was also involved in the project. We're going to talk about this in just a second, but I want to tease what I'm going to talk about for real. Now you say, Emil, you're wearing orange. That is a bright orange. Is that a Filipino color? No, it's not. Not unless you're working the freeways or the side, picking up trash on the side. No, you wear orange today because this is National Orange Shirt. Oh, and the digital divide happened again. I'm telling you, this happens when I come up here to my gong closet because I have to go on an elongated Ethernet cord, and sometimes it's not as good as a short Ethernet cord. And anyway, I'm wearing today's National Orange Shirt Day. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what's going on in Congress, all that political stuff. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. As we ask the question, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? What that? WDAAT. But first, as I said, what does an Asian American think about Kulintang music? Well, it's a Filipino thing. You know that, right? It's a music that is indigenous. It's a music that's being celebrated, and the Smithsonian, through its Smithsonian Folkways division, put out a new double album. And I'm pleased to have my friend Ty Buckhold here with me. Ty, you're with me.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Ty.
Hi.
This is the first time we're doing this because, this is a special occasion. We're ending September. We're starting Filipino American History Month in October. And this album's come out. And now tell me what your involvement with the Kulintang culture, besides the fact that you were very close to Danny Calanduyan, who was the main composer of most of the pieces. Well, what was your involvement?
Well, in 2001, Danny and I were talking about the sorts of projects we would like to do. Danny had a person who was his grant writer, but then she moved to the Philippines, and so he needed to find another grant writer. He needed to find what other projects he wanted, because his grant writer was actually finding the grants, would go to him, make the suggestion, he'd approve it, and then she'd write the grant. Well, once she was gone, we had to figure out what was next. And we were thinking about it, and I told Danny that what I really would love would be a recording of Kulintang music the way the music is actually played, not a stage performance, but actually as an ensemble.
Yeah. You mean
And recorded cleanly.
like Kulintang in life? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
right. Not necessarily music that was fashioned to accompany a dance troupe, but actually the music that people play.
Yeah.
But Danny had a lot of these types of recordings, but in all of them, you could hear the chickens, the motorcycles, the children, the people talking, because he had field recordings. And what I told him was, I really wanted to get a good recording of Kulintang music, the traditional music, not something that was made up to accompany something on stage. And I wanted it to be something that could possibly replace what the Bayanihan dance troupe was using, because all throughout the United States, people who wanted to dance or be involved in somehow in this part of the culture of the Southern Philippines, they could only look at the very old LPs, the records, and they didn't really have any choices. And so Danny said to me, it's really a shame that people think that that is the culture of the Southern Philippines, because it's not.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but well, I mean, what else do they have? We need to give them something. We need to find a way to get a studio and have a clean recording, something that people could hear, something that could be played on the radio, something that people would feel proud to present at a gathering without having to hear the motorcycles and all that.
You notice I'm sneaking in a little Kulintang music.
I heard that.
Yeah, I figured out how to do the volume on my screen here. So now, all right. So now and you mentioned the Bayanihan, right? Those old records, because I think every Filipino immigrant who came in the, 30s, 40s, 50s, like my mother and father got married in the 50s. My father came here in the 20s. But like, if you were a Filipino family, you had a full disc set of the Bayanihan strings, right? Playing all that Spanishy stuff.
You'd have the records.
You'd have the records
that were released by the Bayanihan National Dance Troupe in the 60s, mostly in the 60s. So some of them may have been recorded in the 50s.
So you'd have the bandoleras, you'd have all that, and
the bandurias.
Bandurias, excuse me. The bandoleras, that's what you shoot with, I think. The bandurias, which is the thing about that is it's Spanish, which is interesting because that would be part of September, October that's Hispanic Heritage Month with Filipinos. We play the bandurias and say, oh, look at how we've been inculcated by the Spanish with the music. But this Kulintang music that people are hearing now, this is the Filipino music.
Yes, it is. It's actually Filipino American, because Danny Calanduyan came to the United States in the 80s, and he became a U.S. citizen, and he taught this music, the traditional music that he learned from his mother and from his relatives. He taught this to Filipino Americans throughout the United States. And the wonderful thing about this 2 CD set is the first CD has to do with the traditional music that Danny taught and performed for decades. The second CD is the music that was produced by Filipino Americans, Filipino Canadians, who were inspired by Danny's work. So this is not Filipino music, it's Filipino North American music on the second.
And that makes it even better, because this is authentic American Filipino, not just indigenous this is indigenous American Filipino music. Now, I want to bring on the co-producer of this project. A good friend of mine is Theo Gonzalez. The person who helped him on this is Mary Tolusan, and Mary is with us. Hi, Mary. Oh, I think you're muted there, Sonia. Hi, Mary.
Hi, nice to see you both. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, well, it's good to, sometimes someone has to get to me and, kick my tail into, hey, you can have people on your show. It doesn't have to just be you. And I said, well, why not just me? No, you have to have other people, like, all these people who made this record, and you have to play, Danny Calanduyan's music. And, we had a little bit going there. Now, what are we hearing? This is Tara Blangan Part 1, Florante Aguilar. Mary, what you were the co-producer. Why did you pick this song?
I was. So on the second part of the album, CD2, are all the different ways that Filipino Americans have like incorporated traditional Kulintang into their like new works. So that's one of the artists who like incorporated the sounds of Kulintang into his new music. So I love what Titania was saying, that, you know, this is indigenous Kulintang North American music, because on that second CD, you can really hear like what Filipinos in the diaspora have done with this music, like used it, you know, to show their identity, to show their connection to the Philippines, and of course their pride.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Hey,
that's
look, I just stand next to a gong. That's what I do. I don't want to embarrass myself too much by playing it, although it is just an agong, and I just keep time. If you can play a tambourine, you should be able to play an agong. But just standing next to it is enough for me. And what was your involvement, first of all, in terms of getting into Kulintang music? How did it enter into your soul so that it's become such a part of your life?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. But I was a classical musician for a long time, and when I went to UCLA, I went to this department called ethnomusicology, and that's the study of you know, music around the world. But I really wanted to learn more about the Philippines. I grew up in Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts, and there was,
Boston.
yeah, there wasn't a lot of Filipino culture at the time, so it just gave me an opportunity to learn more about like the culture in the Philippines. So I ended up living in the Philippines for about 18 months, and I already had met Danny when he came to UCLA and performed, and I loved Kulintang. Like my mind was on fire. I needed to know more about this music. So I ended up studying with members of his family, his brother Kanapia, and his niece. And you know, from then on, I've just been a lifelong student of Kulintang. Like I don't consider myself like an expert or anything,
Yeah.
but I just love it, and I can't get enough of it. And I really, really miss Danny. You know, it's his death anniversary this past week, and he's just been like such a huge inspiration in my life and my identity as a Filipino American. So I
Yeah.
was really proud to work on this album.
So you grew up in Boston. I was
Mhm.
there in the 70s. You probably grew up a little later, like in the 80s or 90s, right?
Sure, let's go with that.
Okay. We're all young. It's just that when I was in Boston, I didn't see very many Filipinos. And, there is a kind of an assimilation kind of thing going on there. So that if you saw any Asian or Filipino, you kind of just looked at them and said, me too, and so I get how you must have felt when you heard your first Kulintang music as a classical musician, when everyone is talking about, oh, let's play Mozart in the original instruments, and you're saying, no, let's play Kulintang with the original bronze gongs, right?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, but essentially it's the same thing, right? The same way that white people, Europeans, let's call them, want to play Mozart with the original instruments. Same thing. You were pulled in the other direction toward Asia.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, Kulintang music is hundreds, if not thousands of years old. I mean, bronze gongs have been in Southeast Asia, you know, for thousands of years. So it really connects the Philippines to other Southeast Asian cultures.
Yeah, and so you're working with my good friend Theo
Hmm.
Gonzalez at the Smithsonian. So this is a Smithsonian Folkways album, which means it's more than just an album. It's like a documentary or a document of the music, the Philippine American music of our times, with the legacy going back to the Philippines, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, Smithsonian Folkways is huge. It's you know, very well respected, and it has representations of many musics from around the world as well as in the United States. So it's really just an honor to like join that crowd and have a CD of not only Danny Kalanduyan's work, but also a representation of Philippine music in their collection.
Okay, I'm gonna play a little bit of this because, well, because I can, because I'm in my upstairs gong closet. So
Mhm.
now this is part of the Tarablangan, right? Is it Tarablangan or Tarabiangan?
Uh,
Part one. Anyway, describe for people who don't know Kulintang music. How would you describe it to people?
Traditional Kulintang music, or the way that
Oh,
this
oh,
particular song?
yeah, what we're hearing now. I mean, it's sounds like a lot of gonging here, Emil. A little high pitch. What's going on here?
Yeah, so in this selection, I mean, you can hear the different ways. Tarabiangan, Part 1. So this is by Florante Aguilar, and he's used several instruments that are found in the Kulintang ensemble, including the Kulintang itself, the sarunai, the agung, but he also has, African shakers and Brazilian drums.
Ah,
So using Kulintang in kind of that world music way, where he's taking different sounds from around the world and kind of making a nice tapestry with it. So,
okay. Let's hear a
yeah.
little bit. Let's hear a little bit. I'd feel a whole lot better about my day if I went into my elevator and I heard that music. Or if I
Mhm.
went into my supermarket and I heard that kind of music instead of, something else. I mean, how would you describe it, Ty? What does Kulintang music do to you? I mean, does it make you want to dance and move? Or does it make you meditative in a Filipino way? What,
Well,
what
some people like to think of it as a meditative music, but for me, it's party music. It's the music that is played outdoors after dinner, and it's loud enough that the entire neighborhood hears it, and they all come because they know there's going to be a party. It is an invitation to come have fun with your friends and neighbors, with your relatives. Each person will bring an instrument if they think it's going to be needed, and they'll run down to where the Kulintang music is being played, and they will play, and it's an entertainment. And as Danny Kalanduyan often said, it is for community building. It is for people to get together after the after dinner at the end of the day. It's also what children often do during the day. When children have access to these instruments, they will teach each other what they have been observing their elders doing. And
Yeah,
so, in that way, Kulintang music is sort of a birthright for children who are raised in the country, who have these instruments available to them. It really is, for me, it's like a glimpse into the past of how children entertained themselves,
yeah.
how they developed their musicality, how they learned how to sort of debut themselves at some point when they became a teenager and old enough to show their elders that they wanted to also play. Um, for me, it's such a wonderful heritage.
Yeah, when I hear this music, I can see what you mean. It builds community. It says, "I'm here. Here I am." It forms community. Like, let's start a rent strike. Come on, everyone, gather around. You know, I can feel it. Also, it's distinct from other banging and drumming of Asia,
It's
right?
real music. It's real music. It's
Well,
not
wait a minute.
making noise.
A lot of people would say, "Oh, wait a minute, you dissing my drumming? You're dissing my Asian drum?" No, when you say real music, because there's keys, there's notes. What?
I say it's real music because so often in the past, up to this point, when people acquire the instruments, they don't have anyone to instruct them on how the music should be played. And so often in the past, I have heard that there is a CD or a record out there that has Kulintang music, or they'll have gongs. They'll have photographs of the gongs on the cover, and then I'll hear that nobody really knew how to play it. So they're just banging away, making a bunch of noise. I actually think it's a little insulting. And I think it is a situation where people have these instruments and it's sort of for them a gimmick. So I love having this CD set available, where people can hear that this is an ancient music that has been perfected over centuries. It's really good music. And then also to be inspired by how the modern Filipino Americans have heard this music and incorporated it into what they want to do.
Yeah, she's Ty Buckholt, my Kulintang teacher, and Mary Talusan is the co-producer of this Smithsonian Folkways album, Kulintang Kultura. You can go to YouTube or Apple Music. You can find it online. But Mary, tell me, what was your hope and dream for this album, and what did you really hope to accomplish by bringing this marriage, right, of the traditional legacy music plus modern day musicians, merging it with what they're doing now?
Yeah, I'm really glad that Theo, was able to get a double CD from the Smithsonian, because the most important thing to me is to show that this music isn't in the past. People do it today with just as much enthusiasm as they did several centuries ago, and also to show that Filipino Americans are definitely a distinct culture. We take elements of what we know, what we heard about, what we imagine the Philippines to be, and we kind of incorporate it into our own expressions. So I think like the two parts of the double album really get to the heart of Philippine culture, but also Philippine diaspora, to really show that we can take elements of our culture and do our own things with it and take it further. So I was really excited about that. If I could just pick up on something Tanya said, if you want to play track 12 on the same CD that you're playing now, this is on the second CD, but it's an example of traditional music. The reason it's on the second CD is because Filipino Americans are playing it. So there's two things going on. Like, some Filipino Americans really continue to study the traditional form of Kulintang and like dedicate themselves to that, while other Filipino Americans like kind of just work it into their new works. So in that way, Filipino Americans are also diverse.
Yeah, I don't have the whole album. Oh, actually, I don't. I only have the first 5 cuts because I'm listening to it on on SoundCloud, and I don't get 12. But I have Han Han featuring Datu.
Actually, if I can comment on what you're playing right now, the awesome thing, and Titania brought this up, Danny created clean versions of pieces that folk dancers would usually use to accompany folk dance, but these are like the real versions of those songs. And so it says right on the album, people who are doing folk dances of Mindanao can take these things that Palabonian recorded and use those during their folk dance performances.
Wow, so it's just another level of authenticity, right? And,
yeah.
And one thing, I don't have the album, so I can't go directly to the thing that we were talking about, but it's full of this sort of discovery, and it shows just how varied and expansive Kulintang music is. Because look, you must feel this sometimes. People come up and say, "Oh, it sounds kind of primitive. It sounds kind of reductive." It sounds, although it's very complex, right? Polyphonic, polyrhythm. But some people would say, "Oh, it doesn't sound like the Bayanihan." They compare it to the Spanish. Now that must get your ire somewhat when you hear people who say, "Ooh, Kulintang," but they love the Bayanihan, right?
About the worst thing I have ever heard anyone say to me was, really beautiful music, really complex. Too bad it's not really Filipino. That is the worst thing anyone has ever said to me. And I was shocked. This was after the first major concert I ever participated in with Danny Calandian and his Kulintang Ensemble in San Francisco. And when the woman told this to me, she and I had been talking for about 10, 15 minutes, and she had been very complimentary. It was really amazing. And then for her to give that as a parting shot before she left the auditorium, I was in shock. And I went to Danny and said, why would she say something like that? It was back to the fact that there are so many different cultures in the Philippines
Yeah.
that she just felt like if she wasn't familiar with it, then it didn't belong.
See, and this is the thing. As we celebrate this part where Hispanic American or Hispanic Culture Month dovetails with Filipino American History Month, it's kind of a weird acknowledgement of Filipinos that because we have a little of a bit of both. And there are some in our culture who believe that the Spanish part is the high part of our culture, right? Or because the American part, what is the Filipino part? Oh, those guys with the gongs. And I think the beauty of hearing this music presented by Mary and Theo in this Smithsonian Folkways collection is to really appreciate the Filipino-ness of it, appreciate the musicality of it, and appreciate just I mean, it's just funny how when you listen to it, if you're Filipino, you feel more Filipino. That's just how I can say it. I'm sorry. I feel more Filipino. I feel more Filipino just standing next to my gong, which is why I have it here in my closet. Mary, so what do you hope to do? Are you going to tour? Are you going to? What are you going to?
No. I'm mostly an academic, but can I just like return to that comment? I mean, let's turn that around and say, there can only there can only be one way to be American. Like, how awful would that be to, as far as acknowledging that the United States is made up of so many cultures. So, that was.
Well, there's 7,200 islands in the archipelago. There's 7,200 ways to be Filipino.
Absolutely.
And cool. And as Ty pointed out to me, the fact that my gong has a little round knob means this is from Mindanao. And because I'm Ilocano or Ilocano heritage, I would have a flat gong. And that would be, so I'm a flat gong. So I'm here with the enemy. I mean, standing there. Well, it's a round gong. Round gong, and the flat one. Anyway, hey, so it's the album's out. People can buy it, right, Mary?
Yes, absolutely. We're excited for more and more people to listen to this and just have it circulate around the country, and for people to be exposed to the diversity of the Philippines, but also Filipino Americans. This music is I mean, I'm a composer of classical music, or I used to be, and this music is incredibly complex. On top of that, it's improvised. And so it takes a lot of artistry for a Kulintang player to improvise on these well-known pieces, but to do it in a way that brings a lot of freshness and excitement to it. Kulintang music is evolving. It's not how it sounded, prior to the 1950s. People have added, elements to it and different unique ways of playing it. So
what modern stuff have they added?
Well, during the 1950s, when more and more men started to play the Kulintang instrument itself, the 8 gongs. So Kulintang is an ensemble, but it's also the instrument of 8 gongs. Once more and more men started to play that, they added like the rhythmic stuff that they would usually play on the agong or the gandingan. And so that kind of represented another style of Kulintang player that was a lot more rhythmic than the older styles, which were a lot more melodic.
Yeah. Now you said something. You said it does, an improvised music, spontaneous music, kind of like a link to jazz. Whenever I've seen Danny play, either in person or on video on YouTube, I keep saying, he must be in this trance. Where are the notes? Where's the sheet music to this stuff? There's no sheet music. I tell my friends, it's in your soul. This stuff is in your, it's the Filipino part of the heart. And that's part of the beauty too. It's so spontaneous, but it because of that, because it's in that oral tradition, it just keeps expanding and growing. It just is not, you don't capture it in a way, except through recordings, I guess, right?
It is a living music. That is a fact. And a lot of people who would see me play this music over the years would ask me, how can you just play it? And I said, well, I've been playing it for a long time. It's muscle memory. I just know it's like a language. I play mostly Maguindanao and Kulintang music. I understand the phrasing. I understand what I can add in, what I can drop out. I can make the pieces longer, shorter, however way I want it, because I know how to play. And for some people, they're just sort of stuck on, why aren't you looking at a piece of paper? That's not how this music works. It is a very dynamic and living music.
Yeah, let those European orchestral folks, let them
Mhm.
look at the sheet music. We got the sheet music in the heart, right, Mary? It's all inside here.
Absolutely. And if I can plug my book, Instruments of Empire, I
Why
did it on
not?
a
Yeah,
I
please.
did it on, this is relevant though. I did it on a Philippine military band in the early 1900s. But what they did was memorize all their music. It was a show of their level of expertise to memorize like 1,000 pieces. And even Filipino jazz bands in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, they memorized their stuff. It's not that they couldn't read it, it's that they wanted to show how well they knew the music. So even in like 1904, this Filipino band, the lights went off when they were playing, and they kept playing because they didn't need the music because they
I don't get
memorized
no
it.
shit music.
That's
Not
exactly
here.
right.
Hey, no shit,
Yeah.
no shit music. Okay, so that's good. So, Mary,
So it
what's
might
in
be a
your book?
Filipino thing that's not just about in the Maguindanaoan culture, but it could be all over the Philippines.
Yeah, what's the name of your book, Mary?
It's called Instruments of Empire,
Okay, there it
and it
is.
just came out. Filipino musicians, Black soldiers, and military band music during U.S. colonization of the Philippines.
Wow. So, did the Honer Marine Band, did that come out of that? Or is there any connection with the Marine Band harmonica?
I don't know about the harmonica. This is a band that was like prior to World War II,
Yeah.
but they were like the most famous military band in Asia. And they came to the US like 3 times to tour the United States. So my great grandfather was in that band, and that's why I
Oh,
wrote the book.
see, now there's the musical legacy. There,
Yeah.
my 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 great. I think my great grandfather. Well, my father was my grandfather, so his father would be my de facto great grand. I don't know what he was, but anyway. So I'm going to use this music as my background because I've been using this non copyright music or copyright free music, but I like Danny's music. It always makes me smile. Uh, Last words, Ty, about Danny's you know his being honored by the Smithsonian Folkways with
I
this.
am so, so happy that this came out. Danny was in very poor health in 2015 and 2016. And I was with him quite a lot. I used to ask him, what are we going to do about that really cleanly recorded CD of music? What are we going to do with it? Because it actually had gone out of print. So when he passed away, which was on September 28th, 2016, 5 years ago, I thought the first thing I want to do is I want to get this thing back in print. There's got to be a way. And I felt that there was opportunity knocking when the Smithsonian called me up in January of 2017 and said, we really want to honor Danny Kalandian at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival in Washington, D.C. And every time the Smithsonian called me up, I'd say, I've got this music. I've got Danny's music. And it kept sort of chipping away and chipping away. And lucky for me, Theo Gonzalez agreed that he would work on it with me. And then when Theo got a job at the Smithsonian, he said, let me take it. I said, go run with it because I have a lot of other things to do. So I was so, so happy when he said, no, I think they're going to go ahead and reprint it because this is Danny. And he is, at the time, the only Filipino American to ever be honored by the National Endowment for the Arts as a national treasure in traditional music. And since it looks like they want to go ahead and issue the music of Danny, this will be our only chance, really, to have Filipino American music for a very long time issued by the Smithsonian. So I think this is completely Theo's idea. He said, I think we should try to get a double CD. And I thought, great idea. Go with it.
Well,
So
I think it's wonderful just playing one track of it over and over again. I can't wait for the other parts of the CD. Hey, listen, thank you for being part of this program today, Emil Amok's Takeout. Mary Tolusan, thank you for it's a great little uh, album project. I can't wait to get a hold of the full album, and I hope to have you back again to talk about your work and other things. I mean, it's good to hear Filipino Americans in Boston. I was a Filipino American boss in Boston, and it was cold, and I'm glad I'm not in Boston anymore. So, but Mary, thank you for coming on.
Thank
Ty,
you.
you. People can get the album. You can find it on all the different places where you look for music, SoundCloud, whatever. Find it on YouTube. Actually, I'll put a link, the link to all the different platforms that Theo sent me. I'll put it on my website at amok.com. But Mary, thank you very much. Ty, thank you, and good luck on the album.
Thank you so much
see you
for
next
having me
time.
on. See you.
Yeah,
Bye.
tell your friends they can go watch the replay and see you, and then you can spread this around. We'll make this Kulintang viral. Okay.
Hooray.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Ty. And there they go. The Kulintang folks. And I could do this. I could have more people on, but I do this solo, right? But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just have the Kulintang music going. I feel oddly Filipino. And it's right though. They're saying that every Filipino kid who grew up in the 50s and 60s, their family had this set of 78 RPM discs, black discs. And they contained the Bayanihan dancers, and they played the bandurias, all the Spanishy songs of the Spanish colonial Philippines. And it's part of that inculcation, part of that colonization, right? It's colonial mentality. And when I remember when I first heard Kulintang music, it was I only heard it first in the 80s. I was at the NBC affiliate in San Francisco doing, I don't know what I was doing some story about Asianness. I saw my friends dressed up in these get-ups, sort of like, this is a traditional Philippine scarf, and and they're dressed up like from Maguindanao, like the gongs. And I recall at first not really being into it that much. I mean, the rhythm, yeah, but over the years, I actually started taking gong lessons from Ty. We're talking about, this is her mother's gong. Thelma Buckhold, her gong. And it's soothing. That music is soothing. Anyway, here we are. Emil Amok's Takeout. That's what we call this thing. We didn't get sidetracked. This is part of what we do, right? Every now and then talk about parts of Asian American culture. Because Asian America is more than just Chinese, more than just Japanese, more than East Asia. It's also South Asia. It's also the South Pacific part of Asia. It's also the Philippines. Some people say, yeah, it also includes north of all the stands. We can't forget the Kyrgyzstan, Turkestan, the Mongolian region. Can't forget that. It shows you when you say Asian American, how inadequate that term is. So when I say WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? I mean all of us. But now we're into our what does an Asian American think section. What does an Asian American think, about this budget thing? This is where I, as Emil Guillermo, the erstwhile news person, talk show host, weighs in and tells you what does an Asian American think about all these things that no one thinks we think about. But we're thinking about it. Look, if you need a babysitter, if you are a woman who can't work, go back to work because you've got, you can't find a babysitter, you better be thinking about the budget. If you're a young Asian American couple trying to figure out, well, what do I do with my kids when I go off to work? Or what do I do with that pre-K? What do I do about you better be paying attention to the US budget. And you better be wondering, why doesn't your government want to help you be a full American where you can do everything you need to do? But, funny, you're raising a kid, you're trying to raise a family, you can't do it. You can't work and have a career because you're not getting paid enough, because the resources aren't there. Well, here's a way to get those resources there. You get it in the budget, you get it in that soft infrastructure package that Biden's trying to get through, that apparently you're ultra progressive if you want to really deal with health care and family care and all these other things. And, the moderates want to take out all these programs and not pay for these things, or they don't want to be seen as not paying for these things. Meanwhile, the Republicans during the Trump administration, well, they just blew up the budget. During the Trump years, the deficit went up to about $28.5 trillion. Donald Trump gave tax cuts to all the rich, and suddenly, now the Republicans have discovered fiscal responsibility when they want to stop all the good things that the Democrats, and I put the Democrats together, the progressives and the moderates, they all want it. They just don't know how to express themselves politically because they don't want to seem like, oh, we're spendthrifts. Democrats, you don't have to appear to be spendthrifts. You're coming off the 4 years of the Trump administration. That was spendthrift with the face of fiscal conservatism, which was just one of the Trump lies. I just, finally, Joe Manchin, the Democrat Republican, finally said, okay, this is what we think we need. We want to get it down to 1.5 trillion. They want to get off this top number, because it seems too much, and it's going to seem like, they're going to catch a little, flack from people at home for spending too much. But this is the kind of spending you need to do. This is the kind of spending you need to do to help Americans. I'm sorry. The least they could have done, they did. They put off the vote that would have shut down the government on Thursday. Today's Thursday. Thank goodness we have until now, I think December, to get it right, or get on the same page, or get on the same boat, or not to miss the boat that goes together toward that kind of America we want, where all our needs, well, not all our needs, but a lot of our basic needs are taken care of. Because we need to let Americans know that we're taking care of them, that we haven't abandoned them. Not like the previous 4 years, where some people felt taken care of. Oh, the corporations, that 1%. But if you're in that 99%, you probably don't feel like you've been taken care of very much at all. And now here we are in the, in the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic. Make no mistake, we are still in the pandemic. We're not out of this by a long shot. People are still dying. People are still getting sick. And, America is, as a nation as a whole, we're getting into the 70%, level of vaccinations. But everyone in the world's got to get vaccinated if we truly want to prevent, more variants, if we want to prevent, another wave You can't, you just cannot let your guard down right now, thinking that, oh, well, everyone's vaccinated. I'm looking at all those people. They look unmasked and they're on television and they look like they're living their life. I'm going to live my life too. No, no, no. It's not that way yet. We're not there yet. Don't let your guard down. Do not be a good Filipino boxer. Don't let your guard down. All right, some other things we're going to talk about today. I wanted to explain my orange shirt. It's not just because I'm a Giants fan. I am a Giants fan. I'm sad about Captain. I'll call him the Captain, Captain Brandon Belt. You know, he had to have something. Otherwise, he'd be going down to his last day playing baseball, known as, you know, what did they call him? The giraffe? Baby Belt? Yeah, you know, that 10 years ago, that was good. You know, Belt is the giraffe. He's the captain now. And when he got back from his last injury, say the last month, boy, he's been clutch. He's been good. I remember him when he was a young guy in the 2010 team coming up, or a 2011 team, really. And he wasn't really quite there, and he was kind of erratic. Boy, you know, I've seen him grow, seen Brandon Crawford grow, and now he's really the base of the team, and he's hurt. He broke his thumb. So, but this team, the Giants are going to bounce. They're going to bounce back from these injuries. I say bounce back because they're in first place by 2 games. But those damn Dodgers, oh my God, they were blown out by the San Diego Padres in the 7th inning. It looked like, oh, it's going to be easy sailing for the Padres. The Dodgers went off to have like a 5-run 8th, and they win the game to stay 2 games behind the Giants. I don't know if people are rooting for the Dodgers to catch the Giants. That's why I have this anxiety about the Giants sort of folding. And when the Giants are hurt, I have my confidence is diminished, right? But I'm gonna stay hopeful. They're playing well. They find a way, and let's just hope that Johnny Cueto comes back. That's a possibility. McGee, the reliever, comes back. And let's hope that all the guys who've contributed come on strong. You know, Lamont Wade Jr., God, he's been a real favorite. Chris Bryant has been good, but not great. Maybe he comes into greatness in October. Anyway, so I'm not wearing orange because of the Giants. Although, yes, I am a Giants fan. And if you're a California baseball fan, this is a great time, because the Giants have just won more games than they ever have as a San Francisco franchise. They're ahead of the Dodgers, their arch rival. Asian Americans in San Francisco and in LA are like really excited, even though Shohei Ohtani is playing for the Angels down there. Another reason to be excited about baseball if you're an Asian American. This is the best pennant race, and it could come down to the final days. The Giants are up by two games, and I think the season ends on Sunday. So we got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We got 4 games left. I know it's going to be tight. But rooting for the Giants. Anyway, the reason I'm wearing orange, this is National Orange Day, folks. National Orange Day. Emil, what does National Orange Day mean? It means, well, it's a Canadian holiday. But the stuff that happened in Canada, it happened in the United States too. You know, the idea of First Nation peoples, being sent to boarding schools, indigenous people sent to boarding schools, what we call Native Americans here in the US, First Nation peoples in Canada. It was happening all throughout the continent. And it was more, I don't want to say it was more egregious up in Canada, but the reports about dead bodies, the reports of mass graves, that has come out of Canada. I don't know if that was similar to anything in the U.S. In the U.S., I know about the Carlisle School in Pennsylvania, and all this happened around 1897, taking Native American, indigenous children away from their families in these boarding schools to really to acculturate them, to colonize them and make them into, well, the saying was, kill the Indian, save the man. So you think about that and you think, okay, I've been talking a lot about lately, because I went to this person of color thing at Harvard. I've been talking a lot about Harvard and how at Harvard I learned to be white. And in some ways, friends of mine have long been sort of hinting this to me as I tell my story. They said, well, what about the Carlisle School, Emil? Native Americans. And I didn't quite get it, because I wasn't really wrapping my head around what they were doing to Native children, to indigenous children, until the most recent stories came out within the last year, and now I get it. And what I see is that if you're a person of color, if you're, they call them BIPOCs, right? Black, indigenous, people of color. For a reason, it lumps us together. But if you don't know all our stories, then you are only part BIPOC. So if you're Asian American and you don't know, look, a lot of people don't know our stories, our rich stories. They don't know our rich stories about Kulintang music. They don't know our rich stories about Filipinos. They don't know our rich music about, the fact that, it's not just Chinese. That's not just Asian American. It's Chinese, Asian Indian, Filipino, Chindapinos, right? That's what I say. That's who we are. The bulk of us. A lot of people don't know our story, but we need to know everyone else's story too. And that's why I'm wearing orange, because you need to know about Orange Shirt Day. They're calling it World Orange Shirt Day, to remember that every child matters. That you don't just take a child from the indigenous family and throw them into a school and try to turn them into a white guy or gal. They tried to do that. So I remember, I honor it. This is the first I've heard of Orange Shirt Day. I mean, I just read about it the other day. And I said, I'm going to wear orange today, because we have to be aware of these stories. It's funny how we know very little about our Native brothers and sisters. I'm just recently, within the last year or two, people started honoring, the lands, the Native lands that where they are standing now, and because I'm a news guy, I have some sense of, like, in the past, like if I was in Nevada, well, those are the Washoe Indians up there, up in Reno, in San Francisco. Those are the Ohlonies. Just recently, I'm in the land of the Miwok, the Miwoks. There's another half of that I'm forgetting. But I remember going up to a place in Mendocino, and it was like an historical place, a map of all the Indian tribes. There are so many of them, and we don't know their stories. We should. So I've just been made more aware of total ignorance of the native story, the indigenous story. It shouldn't happen. You know, if you are a Black, indigenous person of color, Asian American, whatever, Latinx, we need to know each other's stories. We need to know each other's stories and honor them, because there are similar stories amongst us that we share. It doesn't take much to examine and say, oh, wow, me too. I mean, really, me too. So that's why I'm wearing the orange shirt today. I want to honor the First Nation peoples in Canada. You know, the reason why it's orange shirt, because when the woman who started it wore an orange shirt, she was given an orange shirt by her grandmother, her mother. You know, she was given an orange shirt. She went off to the school. When she got to the school, they took her orange shirt away. So when she started this, she said, I'm calling it Orange Shirt Day. I want to talk briefly about abortion. Maybe I'll get to it tomorrow. You know, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, man, what a congresswoman she is. She represents Oakland. She told her abortion story. I believe it was under, she testified about how abortions would become, you know, these backstreet affairs if laws like the Texas law goes into effect throughout the nation. It's touching. I'll mention it tomorrow because we're running out of time. And I wanted also to mention Bigotry on Broadway. If you missed the event, go to my Facebook, emilguillermo.media. I think they should be running a video of that again. But Bigotry on Broadway is this new book. My essay on South Pacific is included. It's a collection by Ishmael Reed and Carla Blank. I got to meet some of the authors. I think I would buy this just for the essay by Lonely Christopher, Great Moments with Mr. Hamilton. If you don't know anything about Hamilton and why there's something wrong with Hamilton, you ought to get this book. But also, you know, my essay's in there. And then there was another essay that I found interesting about Bloody Andrew Jackson. Betsy Theobald Richards wrote it. Another Native story, you know, just not familiar with. And to think, you know, I went to Andrew Jackson School in San Francisco, and I thought nothing of the fact that I went to Andrew Jackson School until later in life. I realized, why are we calling it Andrew Jackson School? He's an a-hole. Oh, he's president a-hole. Oh, well, we've since had another one. So maybe we should rename Andrew Jackson School. All right, so there, I covered all the bases here. Orange Day, Bigotry on Broadway. We'll mention more about other things tomorrow and tomorrow's show. But we've gone an hour. Look for the replay of this show. I'll put it on emilguillermo.media, on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel, Emil Amok. Emil, 2 words, Emil Amok on YouTube. Also, amok.com, amok.com. So that's it. We're here Monday through Friday live, 2 p.m. Pacific. And then we have the Lanyap section, which we do after. I mean, the Lanyap section is before and after. It's a little something extra. We usually try to get out in a half hour, but as you can see, there's a little spillover, you know, like you go to a Woolworths counter and order a vegan milkshake, and they always give you the big thing that, you know, always there's more left over. And, you know, the Lanyap, something extra. And here, you know, we talk about, hey, what does an Asian American think? But if you get to this part, we also talk about why you are worth it, why you should be shame-free, why you should go through that door, any door you want. You are worth it. Yeah. Email me, Emil@amok.com. This is the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK. See more at AMOK.com. I'm Emil Guillermo. Tomorrow we're back. This is show 148. We'll be back with show 149 tomorrow. Till then, may you live in health. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Mahal.